You know, I lost a child very suddenly, and I think to lose a child is probably the worst thing anyone could go through. But before I could believe or accept that that had happened, I lost my husband. And to lose Paul is even more unbelievable, really. It was love at first sight. I truly believe that. When I saw him, I just thought, wow, he's handsome. He just made me laugh. I was 21 when I met him, and he was too, you know, so we've known each other all our adult life. He was still in university. George was just perfect in every way. He was just so well behaved. He smiled all the time. George, Dada. We used to just go everywhere together. He was my sidekick, and nothing would put me. I'd go everywhere, and he'd just come with me because he was just so good. He crawled around everywhere, and his only words he could say was "hiya, hiya, hiya," and that's what he'd do all the time. He was wonderful, and Holly and Isaac adored him. He was our little star, and we said that before he was born. We were just this wonderful family of 5. Perfect. It was a normal Wednesday evening, really. Paul was bathing the 2 children, and I was playing with George on the landing. We were chasing each other up and down the landing, like we always did. Yes. He was laughing, he was giggling, he was waving. So we went downstairs, and Holly and Isaac were watching telly, and George was crawling around playing with his toys. Paul was in the kitchen. And the next thing, George was sat playing with his toys, and then sort of his body went backwards. He sort of collapsed backwards. So I got up slowly. I wasn't panicking. I didn't think there was anything to worry about. When I tried to pick him up, his body was limp. He was like a dead weight. And that's when I started panicking. I started screaming for Paul to come into the room. So he looked and took him off me, and he said, "Call 999, call 999. So I'm in the hallway trying to speak to them, but I'm obviously hysterical. Paul is knelt by George on the floor. We're shouting to the ambulance, you know, hurry up, hurry up. And then with that, George started fitting. Slowly to start, not very much, and then gradually it got quite aggressive. He was being sick as well at the same time on the floor. Paul was knelt with him, just talking to him and prompting him and just saying, "It's all right, Georgie, it's all right, Georgie." I was in the street then in the rain, just with the phone, my cordless phone, just screaming, "Hurry up, hurry up, hurry up." And then the paramedics turned up and came in. But Paul was really panicking at this point, really panicking, trying to undress George to help the paramedics. We then took George to the hospital in the ambulance. He was doing okay until we got about halfway there, and then at that point he took a turn for the worst. All I can remember is just nothing but doctors and nurses just rushing around everywhere. They were amazing. They really were. They did everything, you know, they could. They sat with us. They reassured us. They then had to put George to sleep for a bit because he was getting quite agitated and things like that. And I can remember Paul saying, "Come and hold his hand," when they do it. So we both held his hands. And I'm glad, you know, because he never woke up again. 2 hours before, I was chasing him up and down the hallway, laughing at me, and now he'd gone. And before I knew it, I was holding him. They pulled out everything. They couldn't do it quick enough. And I was just holding him. He's dead. He's gone. And Paul stood next to me, and we just, how do you accept that that's just happened? You know, you just sat there. And we were just there then with him for a good couple of hours, just holding him. And then we were just said we had to leave. And they were given a booklet. And we were escorted back down to A&E and out into the night. And we were just left, and, you know, to cope. And we had so many questions. How did this happen? Why did this happen? Did we do it? Was it our faults? Could we have saved him? And my mum and dad were there when George died. And they were who we were supposed to depend on. And they were in absolute bits themselves. Paul wanted me to support him. I was in bits. I wanted to support Paul. He was, we were just all drowning in this shock and sorrow. And friends came. Friends were amazing, but they had no idea how we felt because they'd got, thankfully never been through it. He said, it must have been me. I'm his daddy and I should have saved him. And I said, look, what's going on? He said, there's nothing going on. I should have done something. I should have been able to stop this happening. Everyone here could see that he was blaming himself. Next thing, then I heard my mum and dad shout up to say he'd gone off in the car. I said, just leave him. He needs a break. Clear his mind. He needs to clear his mind. Literally thought nothing of it. Got dressed. Time went on a bit. So I was getting a bit cross because I thought, you've driven off now, leaving me crying. You were crying. Just get back now. This is silly. I looked up through the front window to see 2 policemen stood in their uniform. And then don't you? You know something horrific has happened. And all I can remember is Lap being on the floor, falling onto the floor, and my sister and my mum screaming. And he'd gone, that was it. He'd walked away, he'd driven down the motorway, got out of his car and just dived off the motorway bridge. And how do you really come to terms with that, really? I don't know. I can remember not being able to move, not being able to walk. I literally could not move for a good couple of days. I didn't really cope. I existed. I think there's a difference. And I suppose by existing, I was coping. But I didn't leave that gate out there for nearly 6 months. And one morning I woke up and I said to my mum, I'm dying. I said, I can't move. I thought overnight something had happened to me. I couldn't move my hands and my feet and things like that. I just felt I couldn't even get out of bed. And I think at that point, my whole understanding of possibly what Paul went through and everything hit me. I couldn't go back and go out again. And I physically couldn't stop sleeping. And I think for me, it took its toll on me physically. How is your husband supposed to be when your baby dies? I look back and I think, was I there for him? Did I do what I could? And hand on heart, I don't think really I could have done anything different to what he did because, we were together and I just couldn't have. And there was nothing that made me feel that he was not coping as such. He was devastated, but we all were. He was very open with his emotions, which I thought was a really good thing. People would still say now, I still haven't probably really faced it and accepted it. I don't know if I ever will. I don't know how you ever do come to terms with that. I know they're not coming back. I never think I'm going to see them. I never think anything like that. But I keep going. And sometimes I don't really take time out to accept it and think about it. I lost a child very suddenly. And I think to lose a child is probably the worst thing anyone could go through. But before I could believe or accept that had happened, I lost my husband. And to lose Paul is even more unbelievable, really. So I grieved a lot for 2 years. And I'd say only the last few months, I've really started feeling the loss of George. It's all been about Paul. And the last few months, I feel I've perhaps come to terms with that loss a little bit now. He's not here, but I can do it and I'm doing it. And it doesn't mean I think of him less and he'll always be the big part of me. The last few months has been very much about George. Paul should be here today. I couldn't do anything to save George. Neither of us could and nobody could. And I don't think I could have done anything to save Paul, but I think it could have been prevented in the whole scheme of things. And even now, some days I still have that sick feeling. I used to wake up every morning and get that real feeling in my stomach. I still got up. And now that feeling's starting to go. I'm starting to wake up and think, I think of it as soon as I wake up, but I don't have that horrendous feeling. But somebody should have come to our home and sat us down and said, can't tell you how you're going to feel, because you're going to feel very different. But you need to be aware that one of the normal things, or the several normal things you're going to feel, is that you could have prevented it and you should have done more, but you couldn't have. The nurse that helped us in the hospital that night was amazing. You know, I couldn't fault her. And we've remained friends since. And the staff wanted to save our son. They tried very hard to save our son. And they cried when they couldn't save our son. They cared. They made me feel like they had done everything they could because they wanted to bring him home with us. They found out eventually that he had pneumonia and influenza A, which is a strain of swine flu. So actually, Georgie was really, really poorly. A severe strain as well. So he had a really bad infection. And there was going to be very little that they could have done. And that brought massive comfort. It brought massive comfort to me, because even though I knew it wasn't our fault, we always wondered what ifs. And my mum and dad had looked after George the day he died, because I was in work, and I think my mum and dad were like, did we do anything? And that all went then, you know, and there was never, you know, he was poorly and nothing we could have done, and that brought a lot of comfort. How did this all end up the way it has? Because, yeah, he was devastated, but all he said the whole time was how much he loved me and the kids. And they can remember that. He said such a short life, but he brought so much joy. He really did. And he completed me, really, as a mum. Looking back, things could have been done differently. And that is why I feel that we were let down. Not by anyone in particular, by a system that really isn't in place, that could easily be put in place. And I do believe if it had been in place, Paul would be here today.